The C-SPAN networks bring you long-form public affairs programming from the nation's capital and are a public service of your television provider. C-SPAN, created by cable.
Dr. Gruber, it's now your turn. Thank you.
Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Cummings, and distinguished members of the committee for the opportunity to testify voluntarily today. I'm pleased to be able to address some statements I've made regarding the Affordable Care Act and the reaction to and interpretations of those statements. I'm a professor of economics at MIT. I'm not a politician nor a political advisor. Over the past decade, I've used an economic microsimulation model to help a number of states and the federal government assess the impact of healthcare reform on healthcare systems, government budgets, and overall economies. I've had the privilege of working for both Democratic and Republican administrations on healthcare reform efforts. I worked extensively with Governor Romney's administration and the Massachusetts legislature to model the impact of Governor Romney's landmark health reform legislation. I later served as a technical consultant to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and provided similar support to both the administration and to Congress through economic microsimulation modeling of the Affordable Care Act. I did not draft Governor Romney's health plan, and I was not the architect of President Obama's health care plan. After the passage of the ACA, I made a series of speeches endeavoring to explain the law's implications for the U.S. healthcare system from the perspective of a trained economist. Over the past few weeks, a number of videos have emerged from these appearances. In excerpts of these videos, I'm shown making a series of glib, thoughtless, and sometimes downright insulting comments. I apologize for the first of these videos earlier, but the ongoing attention paid to these videos has made me realize that a fuller accounting is necessary. I'd like to begin by apologizing sincerely for the offending comments that I've made. In some cases, I made uninformed and glib comments about the political process behind healthcare reform. I'm not an expert on politics, and my tone implied I was, which is wrong. In other cases, I simply made mean and insulting comments which are uncalled for in any context. I sincerely apologize for conjecturing with the tone of expertise and for doing so in such a disparaging fashion. It's never appropriate to make oneself seem more important or smarter by demeaning others. I knew better, I know better, I'm embarrassed, and I'm sorry. In addition to apologizing for my unacceptable remarks, I'd like to clarify some misconceptions about the content and context of my comments. Let me be very clear. I do not think that the Affordable Care Act was passed in a non-transparent fashion. The issues I raised in my comments, such as redistribution of risk through insurance market reform and the structure of the Cadillac tax, were roundly debated before the law was passed. Reasonable people can disagree about the merits of these policies, but it is completely clear that these issues were debated thoroughly during the drafting and passage of the ACA. I would also like to clarify some misperceptions about my January 2012 remarks concerning the availability of tax credits in states that did not set up their own health insurance exchanges. The portion of these remarks that has received so much attention lately omits a critical component of the context in which I was speaking. The point I believe I was making was about the possibility that the federal government, for whatever reason, might not create a federal exchange. If that were to occur, and only in that context, then the only way that states could guarantee that their citizens would receive tax credits would be to set up their own exchange. I have a long-standing and well-documented belief that health reform legislation in general, and the ACA in particular, must include mechanisms for residents in all states to obtain tax credits. Indeed, my microsimulation model for the ACA expressly modeled for the citizens of all states to be eligible for tax credits, whether served directly by a state exchange or by a federal exchange. I'm not an elected official, nor am I a political advisor. I'm an economist who ran a complex microsimulation model to help Republican and Democratic politicians and their advisors understand the impact that their policies would have on healthcare systems. The recent response to my comments at academic and other conferences exceeds both their relevance and my role in healthcare reform. I behave badly, and I'll have to live with that. But my own inexcusable arrogance is not a flaw in the Affordable Care Act. The ACA is a milestone accomplishment for our nation that has already provided millions of Americans with health insurance. Our country is embarking on an exciting second open enrollment period that will provide new opportunities for these individuals and millions more to choose the insurance plan that works best for them. While I will continue to reflect on the causes of my own insensitivity. I hope that our country can move past the distraction of my misguided comments and focus on the enormous opportunities this law provides. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goldman.